I'm so glad to see you guys today. And we are going to spend this time each day reading a little bit of a chapter book together. And I'm really, really excited about that. Our first book we're going to read is called Ramona Quimby Age 8. And it's written by Beverly Cleary. And she's one of my very favorite authors. It's a book that I read when I was a young girl. I think I've read it to most of my classes. And she also writes Henry Huggins. She writes a lot of other Ramona books. And I think Henry Huggins is one of Mrs. Bass's favorite characters too. I think we have talked about him. Henry and the Paper Route, Henry and Ribsy, his dog. So those are all great books to read. So Ramona is a really fun character. And whenever we read, we always want to look at the cover just to see if we have any connections we can make, like to riding bikes, putting our helmet on, things that we see in the cover that already our brain starts talking to us about. We're going to flip our book over on the back, and we always want to read the blip on the back because that tickles the reader to come inside the book and just see what's going on in there. So this says, everything depends on Ramona. Ramona's job is to be nice to fussy Mrs. Kemp, who watches her while her mother works. If Mrs. Quimby didn't work, Mr. Quimby couldn't return to college. On top of that, third grade isn't turning out as Ramona expected. Danny, the yard ape, teases her. And on one horrible day, she throws up in school. Being 8 isn't easy, but it's never dull. So that sounds really good. The next thing we always want to look for is the table of contents in a chapter book. Here it is. It's usually like the third or fourth page in. This one says it has 9 chapters, and we're probably going to read one a day because they're long. Maybe 2. We don't know. We'll see when we get there. The first chapter is called The First Day of School. The second one's called At Howie's House. The third one is Hard-Boiled Egg Fad. That sounds fun. The Quimbys Quarrel. The Extra Good Sunday. Super Nuisance. The Patient. Ramona's Book Report. And Rainy Sunday. Those all sound good. So here we go to page 1. And this is called The First Day of School. Ramona Quimby hoped her parents would forget about giving her a little talking to. She did not want anything to spoil this exciting day. Ha ha! I get to ride the bus to school all by myself, Ramona bragged to her sister Beatrice at breakfast. Her stomach was feeling very quivery with excitement at the day ahead, a day that would begin with a bus ride, just the right length to make her feel like she was a long way from home, but not long enough, she hoped, to make her car sick. Ramona was going to ride the bus because changes had been made in the schools in the Quimbys part of the city during the summer. Glenwood, the girls' old school, had become an intermediate school, which meant that Ramona had to go to Cedarhurst Primary. Ha-ha, yourself. Beezus was too excited to be annoyed with her little sister. Today, I start high school. Junior high school, corrected Ramona, who was not going to let her sister get away with acting older than she really was. Rosemont Junior High School is not the same as high school, and besides, you have to walk. Ramona had reached the age of demanding accuracy from everyone, even herself. All summer, whenever a grown-up had asked her what grade she was in, she felt as if she were fibbing when she said third because she had actually not started third grade yet. Still, she could not say she was in second grade since she finished that grade last June. Grown-ups did not understand that summers were free from grades. Ha-ha to both of you, said Mr. Quimby, as he carried his breakfast dishes to the kitchen. You're not the only ones going to school today. Yesterday was his last day of work as a checkout counter at the ShopRite Market. Today, he was returning to college to become what he called a real live school teacher. He was also going to work one day a week at the frozen food warehouse of the chain ShopRite Markets to help his family squeak by, as the grown-ups put it, until he finished schooling. Ha-ha to all of you if you don't hurry up, said Mrs. Quimby. She swished the suds in the dishpan. She stood back from the sink so she wouldn't spatter her white uniform that she wore in the doctor's office, where she was a receptionist. Daddy, will you have to do homework? Ramona wiped the milk mustache up and gathered her dishes. That's right. Mr. Quimby flicked a dish towel at Ramona as she passed him. She giggled and dodged. She was happy because he was happy. Never again would he have to stand all day at a cash register, ringing up groceries for a long line of people who were always in a hurry. So now we want to stop and think a minute. When you're reading a book, you begin to gather information about your main character. There's little pieces and clues that go in, get tucked in the story to help you know a little bit more about them. We know Ramona's 8. We know she has a mom and a dad, and we even know where they work and that her dad's going back to college to be a teacher. We know she has a sister, Beatrice, and the family kind of seems like they're a little joking family with each other to me. So as we read, just start collecting pieces and picturing what Ramona and her family might look like. Ramona slid her plate into the dishwasher. "And will Mother have to sign your progress reports?" Mr. Quimby laughed. "I hope so." Beezus was the last to bring her dishes to the kitchen. "Daddy, where do you have to study to learn to be a teacher?" she asked. Ramona had been wondering the same thing. She knew her father knew how to read and do arithmetic. He also knew about Oregon pioneers, and he knew about 2 pints making 1 quart. Mr. Quimby wiped a plate, stacked it in the cupboard. "I'm taking an art course because I want to be an art teacher, and I'm going to study child development." Ramona interrupted. "What's child development?" "How kids grow," answered her father. "Why does anyone have to go to school to study a thing like that?" wondered Ramona. All her life she'd been told that the way to grow was to eat good foods, usually foods she didn't like, get plenty of sleep, usually when she had more interesting things to do than go to bed. Mrs. Quimby hung up her dishcloth, scooped up Picky Picky, the Quimby's yellow cat, and dropped him at the top of the basement stairs. "Scat, all of you," she said, "or you're all going to be late for school." After the family's rush to all brush their teeth, Mr. Quimby said to his daughters, "Hold out your hands." Into each waiting hand, he dropped a brand new pink eraser. "Just for luck," he said, "not because I expect you to make a mistake." "Thank you," said the girls. Even a small present was greatly appreciated because presents of any kind were kind of scarce. The family was trying to save money so Mr. Quimby could return to school. Ramona, who liked to draw as much as her father, especially treasured her new pink eraser. It was smooth, pearly pink, smelling of soft rubber, and just right for erasing pencil lines. And I don't know if you've ever had one of those pink chunky erasers, but they're the best. They do erase everything, and they do smell really good. Reminds me of the first day of school. Mrs. Quimby handed each member of her family a lunch, 2 in paper bags and 1 in a lunchbox for Ramona. "Now, Ramona," she began. "Ugh," Ramona sighed. Here it was, the little talking to she always dreaded. "Please remember," said her mother, "you really must be nice to Willa Jean." Ramona made a face. "I try, but it's awfully hard." Being nice to Willa Jean was the part of Ramona's life that was not changing, the part that she wished would change. Every day after school, she had to go to her friend Howie Kemp's house where her parents paid Howie's grandmother to look after her until one of them could come for her. Both of Howie's parents, too, went off to work each day. She really liked Howie, but after spending most of the summer, except for her swimming lessons in the park, at the Kemp's house, she was kind of tired of having to play with 4-year-old Willa Jean. She was also tired of apple juice and graham crackers for every single snack every day. "No matter what Willa Jean does," complained Ramona, "her grandmother thinks it's my fault because I'm bigger." Like the time Willa Jean wore her flippers. She ran on the sprinkler pretending she was a mermaid on the tuna fish can, and then she left big wet footprints on the kitchen floor. Mrs. Kemp said I should have stopped her because Willa Jean didn't know any better. Mrs. Quimby gave Ramona a big hug. "I know it isn't easy, but keep trying." When Ramona sighed, her father hugged her. "Remember, kid, we're counting on you." And then he began to sing, "We've Got High Hopes." Ramona enjoyed her father making up new words to the song about the little old ant moving up the rubber tree plant, and she really liked being old enough to be counted on, but sometimes when she went to the Kemps, she felt as if everything depended on her. If Howie's grandmother didn't look after her, her mother could not work full-time. And if her mother could not work full-time, her father could not go to school. And if her father could not go to school, he might have to go back to being a checker, and that work made him very tired and cross. Still, Ramona had too many interesting things to think about to let her responsibility worry her as she walked through the autumn sunshine toward her school bus stop. Her new eraser was in her hand. Her new sandals were on her feet. She had that quivery feeling of excitement in her stomach and the song about high hopes running through her head. She thought about her father's new part-time job, zipping around in a warehouse on a forklift truck, filling orders for orange juice and peas and fish sticks and all the other frozen items the markets carried. She called him Santa's little helper because the temperature of the warehouse was way below zero, and he was going to have to wear heavy padded clothing to keep from freezing. The job sounded like a lot of fun to Ramona. She wondered how she was going to feel about her father teaching art to other people's children. She decided not to think about that for a while. Instead, Ramona thought about Beezus going off to another school, where she would get to take a cooking class and where she could not come to the rescue if her little sister got in trouble. As Ramona approached her bus stop, she thought about one of the best parts she liked at her new school. None of her teachers in her new school would even know who she was Beatrice's little sister. Teachers always liked Beezus. She was so prompt and neat. And when both the girls had gone to Glenwood School, Ramona often felt as if teachers were thinking, "Oh, I wonder why Ramona Quimby isn't more like her big sister." When Ramona reached the bus stop, she found Howie Kemp was already waiting with his grandmother and Willa Jean, who had come to wave goodbye. Howie looked up from his lunchbox, which he'd opened to see what he was going to have for lunch, and he said to Ramona, "Look at those new sandals. They sure make your feet look awfully big." "Why, Howie," said his grandmother, "that's not a nice thing to say." Ramona studied her feet. Howie was right. But why shouldn't new sandals make her feet look big? Her feet had grown since her last pair, so she decided not to be offended. "Today I'm going to kindergarten," boasted Willa Jean, who was wearing new cuffrolls and a t-shirt and a pair of her mother's old earrings. Willa Jean was convinced that she was beautiful because her grandmother had said so. Ramona's mother said Mrs. Kemp was right. Willa Jean was beautiful when she was clean because she was a healthy child. But Willa Jean did not feel she was beautiful like a healthy child. She felt like she was beautiful like a grown-up lady on TV. Ramona tried to act kindly toward little Willa Jean. After all, her family was depending on her. "Not kindergarten, Willa Jean," she said. "You mean nursery school." Willa Jean gave Ramona a cross, stubborn look that Ramona knew all too well. "I am going to kindergarten," she said. "Kindergarten is where all the kids are." "Oh, bless her little heart," said her grandmother, admiring her always. The little yellow school bus Ramona had waited all summer to ride, pulled up at the curb. Ramona and Howie climbed aboard as if they were used to getting on buses by themselves. "I did it just like a grown-up," thought Ramona. "Good morning. I'm Mrs. Hannah, your bus aide," said the woman sitting beside the driver. "Take the first empty seat toward the back." Ramona and Howie took window seats on opposite sides of the bus, which had a reassuring new smell. Ramona always dreaded the people and fumes of the big city buses. "Bye-bye," called Mrs. Kemp and Willa Jean, waving as if Ramona and Howie were going on a long journey. "Bye-bye." Howie pretended not to know them. As soon as the bus pulled away from the curb, Ramona felt someone kicking the back of her seat. She turned and faced a sturdy boy. He had a white t-shirt with a long white word on it and a baseball cap with a visor. She studied the word to see if she could find a short word in it. She had learned to do that in 2nd grade. Earth, quakes, earthquakes. Some kind of a team. Yes, he looked like the sort of boy whose father would take him to the ball games. He did not have a lunchbox, which meant he was going to buy a lunch in the cafeteria. "Well, hello, Mr. Dexter." "This is Dexter." I don't know if you can see him or not, but he's coming in to listen to the story too. A grown-up would not call him a purple cootie. Ramona faced the front without speaking. This boy was not going to spoil her first day in 3rd grade. Thump, thump, thump against the back of Ramona's seat. The bus stopped for other children. Some were excited and some were anxious. Still, the kicking continued. Ramona ignored it as the bus passed her former school. Good old Glenwood, thought Ramona, as if she'd gone there a long, long time. "All right, Danny," said the bus aide to the kicking boy. "As long as I'm riding shotgun on this bus, we won't have anyone kicking the seats. Understand?" Ramona smiled to herself as she heard Danny mutter in answer. How funny the bus aide was saying that she was riding shotgun, just like she was guarding a shipment of gold on a stagecoach instead of making children behave on a little yellow school bus. Ramona pretended she was riding a stagecoach pursued by robbers until she discovered her eraser. Her beautiful pink eraser was missing. Did you see my eraser? She asked a second-grade girl who was sitting beside her. The two girls searched the seat and the floor. No eraser. Ramona felt a little tap on her shoulder and turned. Was it a pink eraser? Said the boy in the baseball cap. Yes, said Ramona, ready to forgive him for kicking her seat. Have you seen it? The grin was too much for Ramona. He grinned and jerked down the visor of his baseball cap. Nope, he said. Liar, she said with her most ferocious glare, and faced once more front, angry at the loss of her new eraser, angry with herself for dropping it so the boy could find it. Purple coyote, cootie, she thought. She hoped the cafeteria would serve in fish portions and canned green beans with stringy things in them, and apple wedges, the soft, mushy kind with tough skins, for dessert. The bus stopped at Cedarhurst, Ramona's new school, a 2-story red brick building, very much like her old school. As the children hopped off the bus, Ramona felt a little thrill of triumph. She had not been carsick. She now discovered as if she felt more grown up than her feet. Third graders were the biggest people, except for teachers, of course, at this school. All the little first and second graders were running around the playground looking so young, it made Ramona feel tall and grown up and sort of, well, wise to the ways of the world. Danny shoved ahead of her. Catch! He yelled to another boy. Something small, pink, flew through the air and into the second boy's cupped hands. The boy wound up as if he were pitching a baseball, and the eraser flew back to Danny. You give me back my eraser! Encumbered by her lunchbox, Ramona chased Danny, who ran, ducking and dodging among the first and second graders. When she was about to catch him, he tossed the eraser to another boy. If her lunchbox had not banged against her knees, Ramona might have been able to grab him, but unfortunately the bell rang first. Yard apes! Yelled Ramona. That was her name for the sort of boys who always got the best balls, who were always first on the playground, and who always chased their soccer balls to other people's hopscotch games. She saw her pink eraser fly back into Danny's hands. Yard apes! She yelled again, with tears of anger in her eyes. Yummy yard apes! The boys, of course, paid no attention. Still fuming, Ramona entered her new school and climbed the stairs to find her assigned classroom, which she discovered looked out over all the rooftops and treetops of Mount Hood in the distance. I wish it would erupt, she thought, because she felt like exploding with anger. While Ramona's new room was filled with excitement and confusion, she saw some people she'd known in her old school, other people were strangers, and everyone was talking all at once. They were saying greetings, shouting to old friends, or looking over those who would soon become new friends, rivals, or enemies. Ramona missed Howie, who had been assigned to another room, wouldn't you know? Oh, that yardy Danny was sitting at a back desk, still wearing his baseball cap, and tossing Ramona's new eraser from one hand to another. Ramona was too frustrated to speak. She wanted to hit him. How dare he spoil her first day of school? All right, you guys, quiet down, said the teacher. Ramona was startled to hear her class called you guys. Most teachers she had known would say something like, I feel like I'm talking very loud. Is it because the room is noisy? She chose a chair at a table in the front of the room, and she studied her new teacher. A strong-looking woman with short hair and a deep tan. Kind of like my swimming teacher, thought Ramona. My name is Mrs. Whaley, said the teacher as she printed her name on the blackboard. W-H-A-L-E-Y. Then she said, I'm Whaley with a Y for a tail, a little whale tail. She laughed, and so did her class. Then the whale with a Y for a tail handed Ramona some slips of paper. Please pass these out, she directed. We need to get some name tags until I get to know you. Ramona did as she was told, and as she walked among the desks, she discovered that her new sandals squeaked. Squeak, creak, squeak. Ramona giggled, and so did the whole rest of the class. Squeak, creak, squeak. Ramona went up one aisle and down the other. The last person she gave a slip to was the boy from the bus, who was still wearing his baseball cap. "You give me back my eraser, Yard Ape," she whispered. "Try and get it, Bigfoot," he whispered with a big grin. Ramona stared at her feet. Bigfoot? Bigfoot was a hairy creature 10 feet tall who was supposed to leave huge footprints in the mountains of southern Oregon. Some people thought they'd seen Bigfoot slipping through the forest, but no one had ever been able to prove that he really existed. Bigfoot indeed. Ramona's feet had grown, but they were not huge. She was not going to let him get away with this insult. "Superfoot to you, Yard Ape," she said right out loud, realizing too late that she had given herself a nickname. Well, to her astonishment, Yard Ape pulled her eraser out of his pocket and handed it to her with a grin. "Well," with her nose in the air, Ramona squeaked back to her seat. She felt so triumphant as she returned the longest way around and bent her feet as much as she could to make the very loudest possible squeaks. She had done the right thing. She had not let Yard Ape upset her by calling her Bigfoot. And now she had her eraser in her hand. He would probably call her Superfoot forever, but she didn't care. Superfoot was a name that she had given herself, and that made all the difference. She had won. Ramona became aware that she was squeaking in the middle of an unusual silence. She stopped mid-squeak when she saw that her new teacher was watching her with a smile. And the whole class was watching the teacher. "We all know you have musical shoes," said Mrs. Whaley. Of course, the whole class laughed. By walking with very stiff legs and not bending her feet, Ramona reached her seat without squeaking at all. She did not know what to think. At first she thought Mrs. Whaley's remark maybe was a reprimand, but then maybe her teacher was just trying to be funny. She couldn't tell about grown-ups sometimes. Ramona finally decided that any teacher who would let Yard Ape wear his baseball cap in the classroom wasn't really fussy about squeaky shoes. Ramona bent over her paper and she wrote very slowly and very carefully in cursive, "Ramona Quimby, age 8. She admired the look of what she'd written, and she was happy. She liked feeling tall at her new school. She liked, or she was pretty sure she liked her non-fussy teacher. Yard Ape, well, he was a problem, but so far she had not let him get the best of her for keeps. Besides, although she might never admit it to anyone, now that she had her eraser back, she kind of liked him. Well, sorta. Maybe she just enjoyed a challenge. Ramona began to draw a fancy border, all scallops and curlicues around her name. She was happy, too, because her family had been happy that morning, and because she was big enough for her family to depend on. If only she could do something about that Willa Jean... ... To be continued tomorrow. Isn't it such a great story? Did you love chapter 1? She is a fun character, and I cannot wait to get back and see what happens to her tomorrow. I can't imagine. Yard Ape, school, she's got a lot of things going on in her life. So, thanks for tuning in and reading with me today. I miss you guys, and this just makes us have one more way we can feel closer. So, I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.